employees or...
Well, who's speaking? Oh, there we go.
Oh, do you have any employees or do this all by yourself?
I don't do this all by myself. My wife Debbie, who's sitting over there, and my sister Phoebe have been working with me since I started. It's not something you can do all by yourself. The research part of it I do by myself. And the first set of cubs that I raised by myself and did all the walking.
When you make bears, how does it make a living?
When I do what?
When you help bears, how do you make a living?
When I help bears, how do I make a living? Well, the reality is I don't. I've been very fortunate that my wife Debbie has had a job all these years, and I've been able to do the work that I wanted to do. When I started out, I was still gunsmithing. I had my own business, and I was an independent, and I could take the time that I needed, when I needed it, to go out and work with the bears. But now I lecture for a living, and I write books. I'm writing my second book. And I sell footage of the stuff that I've shot, and I do a little bit better today than I did when I first started.
Have you ever interacted with one of your bears after you let it go to the wild?
Would you repeat the last part of that?
After you let it out in the wild, did you interact with one of your bears?
I still interact with Squirty. She's 16 years old. I still see her almost every day, but from spring till fall. I'm still able to take her collar on and off her without sedating her. I have to bribe her with Oreo cookies in order to do it. If I don't bribe her, she doesn't comply. She just puts her paw up and says, nope, got to pay me. But I see her on a regular basis, and I have for that entire time.
How old is the oldest bear you've had?
Squirty's currently the oldest bear, being 16 years old. I've only been doing this for 20 years, so Squirty's done very well.
What kind of qualifications do you need to start an organization like this?
I didn't have any at all, so. But the reality is I did have a bachelor's degree in wildlife, which allowed the state to have some confidence in what I was doing. The biggest thing about doing anything in life is having the desire to do it and then being willing to figure out what angle and way you can get access to do what you want to do. And that takes some creative thinking. And you've got to also take risks. You've got to decide to do things that you might not know the outcome of. And you also have to deal with people's criticisms and everything else. When I started out and I were walking cubs, people said, oh, you're going to create dangerous nuisance bears. And there were people publicly criticizing me on television, on the radio, and in articles. And, as years passed, all that criticism faded away when they realized what I was doing was legitimate and I was contributing to the knowledge of the general public on bear behavior. And since then, I've realized that criticism often is a good thing. Every time that you do something new, there's going to be somebody who comes out and criticizes you. I call it the bullets passing by my head. And the reality is that people are criticizing, they're paying attention to what you're doing. The worst thing that can happen when you do something new is that nobody pays any attention to it at all. And that's the dangerous part. But it hurts when you start out and people just come out and make really nasty comments, but that seems to be their nature, and you just have to live with it.
When the bears were cubs, when you went here or when you went away, where did you leave the bears? Did you leave them in the wild or did you leave them in your house? Or
Right now?
when they were cubs? Or
When they're
like babies.
When they're cubs, we have an 8-acre forested enclosure that the cubs are in right at this moment. They're all awake this winter. We have 20 bears and 8 acres. And because this is the first year we've had so many, it's been like a big slumber party. They've kept themselves up. Normally they all go to den and we have the winter off and don't have to worry about them. But this year has been very different.
What do you do when the bears are in hibernation?
What do I do when the bears are in hibernation? I take a break. But generally that's time that I can spend writing and doing the work that I need to do or studying. So it's good time.
Has anyone tried to model your scientific method?
What was that?
Has anyone tried to mimic your scientific method?
I'm not really aware that there's other people doing it. I wouldn't be surprised if there were. The reality is there was a lot of people doing it prior to the scientific method being so dominant in our culture, and it's only become dominant in the last 100 years. Prior to that, the work of Darwin is much closer to my methods than to the modern scientific method. He was, after all, studied to be a preacher before he went on his trip with the Beagle around the world. And it was by just by comparative observations did he come up with the whole theory of evolution. And it was his life's work. He spent 5 years collecting information, and the rest of his life trying to convey it to other people. And that's the complicated part. Is being able to discuss what you've observed and put it into words so you can talk about it with other people.
You mentioned that you were initially interested in other animals. Do you think that your work and your research could potentially be applied to the rehabilitation of other animals?
Well, I think my methods could be applied not only to other animals, but to all other aspects of science. I take a holistic approach, and I try to understand systems. And I gave a talk earlier this spring, and somebody from Dartmouth College stood up and said, when I talked about solving problems with systems, and he said, well, that's the latest thing. I'm working down at MIT, and the systems approach is the latest approach to research. We're realizing that it's a very powerful way to address problems, and it really is. We have a much, the world would have a much better understanding of what was going on by taking different approaches. I believe that modern science is limiting itself by taking such a narrow approach to solving problems.
When you were younger, did you think that you would be where you are today?
When I was younger, I thought that everything I wanted to do had been taken away from me. I literally thought that I would not have access to doing anything. And that really made it easier for me to do what I did because I already had lost everything. So I couldn't lose anymore, I could only gain.
When did you find out you were dyslexic?
Well, I was actually tested. I flunked out of kindergarten, and my mother had me tested at that time, but I didn't understand what the tests were. They told me I was very bright, but I wouldn't do well in school. And I went to a private school for 2 years and then was mainstreamed back into public schools. And then at age 40, I was very good with mechanical design, and I was accepted at the Thayer School of Engineering at Dartmouth, and I was tested. They said, oh, we can handle dyslexic kids, and you get tested and you'll be able to do just fine. Well, I was tested and my IQ was in the top 1%, but I read at a third grade level. And I said, and the person who tested me looked at me and she had big eyes, and I said, well, aren't all Dartmouth students, don't they have that kind of IQ? And she says, no, none of them do. They're all about 110. And she said, you're also far more dyslexic than any of the kids here at Dartmouth. And then when they put me into remedial calculus and physics and computer programming, and I quickly flunked out. I understood the theory in all of those classes, and I could converse with the professor, but I couldn't do the calculations. And so and there was nobody there who was willing to make it possible for me. That's when I realized, and I came to a very solid conclusion, that why should I be trying to conform if I'm that smart? You know, I'll go and do it my way and just make myself happy. And the heck with the rest of the world. And as soon as I did that, I became successful.
One more question. In order to prepare the bears to go back into the wild, do you feed them stuff like raw meat or like human food, like sandwiches and stuff?
Well, they really don't get either. They're fed kibble and bits dog food because it's a broad spectrum food that has the right amount of vitamins and stuff, but they also have natural foods. Their 8-acre enclosure has the vegetation that they eat, and it also has oak trees, so they're getting acorns. They're fed apples and acorns that are collected on the outside, plus the natural vegetation that they eat is brought into them. So they're prepared to go into the wild. I will make a comment, though. You mentioned sandwiches. Bears bear-human conflict is a really big thing, and the fact that bears come around people's houses to get bird feeders or garbage that's not secured is a human issue. Bears are going to do what they do. They store fat to get through the winter. The average bear needs to put on 30% of its body weight in fat just to survive hibernation. Female bear needs to put on 50% of her body weight in fat to give birth to her cubs and take care of them and have nutrition for them in the early spring. And so if you really want to understand why bears act the way they do around food and bird feeders and become nuisances, just think about the fact, the way we handle money. We put money in the bank to put kids through college, for our retirement, to buy a boat or a fancy boat or a yacht. And we do really strange things for money. And you would never go home this evening and spread $10 bills all around your lawn and expect that nobody would come and pick any of them up. And that's what it's like leaving food around your yard. If every human complied by not having food attractants in their yards, there would be no bear-human conflicts.
Thank you very much, Ben. Mr. Kilham is going to be on